Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm Dan Sisik, and I'm here with my friends for the Saturday Morning Mastermind. We are studying the book, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. We've been going over that book for the last few weeks now. It's a kind of new twist for us. We normally do books that are like self-help and things and mindset stuff and things like that. But this one is a fictional book, but yet we're actually realizing that there's a lot of practical and life things that you can pull out of it to apply to your life. So we'll get started in that in a second, but first I'm going to let my friends Samantha, Jason, and Catherine introduce themselves, and then we'll get going. And we're in chapter 5 of the book. I'm not sure what page it is in the actual book, but hopefully you can figure that out. So I'll let everybody introduce themselves before we get started.
Hey, I'll hop on out, and glad to be here, everybody. It's Jason from Tampa, Florida, and good to see you all here on this 4th of July weekend.
Good morning. Hopefully you can hear me and I'm not too choppy. It's Samantha in Indiana. Keep it short. I'm going to restart and see if I can join again.
Good morning. It's Catherine Clement, and I'm going to read for us. So I'm not sure what the page number is because I'm on a Kindle, but we're starting at the chapter called Fire. Should I wait for her to get back?
No, she's just going to try and relog back in, but I'd say go ahead and start, and then she'll just, she's just trying to get a better connection.
Okay. Fire. She gasped. The sensations were sudden, the noise and the water. She had her mouth open and she choked, tang and sting of salt water. She tried to touch her feet on the bottom of the pool, but she was out of her depth, so she quickly slipped into breaststroke mode. A swimming pool, but a saltwater one, outdoor, beside the ocean, carved seemingly out of the rock that jutted out of the coastline. She could see the actual ocean just beyond. There was sunshine overhead. The water was cool, but given the heat of the air above her, the cool was welcome. Once upon a time, she had been the best 14-year-old female swimmer in Bedfordshire. She had won 2 races in her age category at the National Junior Swimming Championships. Freestyle 400 meters, freestyle 200 meters. Her dad had driven her every day to the local pool, sometimes before school as well as after. But then, while her brother rocked out on his guitar to Nirvana, she traded links for scales and taught herself how to play not just Chopin, but classics like Let It Be and Rainy Days and Mondays. She also began before the labyrinths were even a figment of her brother's imagination to compose her own music. But she hadn't really gone off swimming, just the pressure around it. She reached the side of the pool, stopped, and looked around. She could see a beach at a lower level in the distance, curving around in a semicircle to welcome the sea lapping on its sand. Beyond the beach, inland, a stretch of grass, a park complete with palm trees and distant dog walkers. Beyond that, houses and low-rise apartment blocks and traffic sliding by on a road. She had seen pictures of Byron Bay, and it didn't look quite like this. This place, wherever it was, seemed a little bit more built up. Still surferish, but also urban. Turning her attention back to the pool, she noticed a man smile at her as he adjusted his goggles. Did she know this man? Would she welcome this smile in this life? Having no idea, she offered the smallest of polite smiles in return. She felt like a tourist with an unfamiliar currency, not knowing how much to tip. Then an elderly woman in a swimming cap smiled at her as she glided through the water towards her. "Morning, Nora," she said, not breaking her stroke. It was a greeting that suggested Nora was a regular here. "Morning," Nora said. She stared out at the ocean to avoid any awkward chatting. A flock of morning surfers speck size, swam on their boards to greet large sapphire blue waves. This was a promising start to her Australian life. She stared at her watch. It was a bright orange, cheap-looking Casio. A happy-looking watch suggestive, she hoped, of a happy-feeling life. It was just after 9 a.m. here. Next to her watch was a plastic wristband with a key on it. So this was her morning ritual here. In an outdoor swimming pool beside a beach. She wondered if she was here alone. She scanned the pool, hopefully for any sign of Izzy, but none was there. She swam some more. The thing she had once loved about swimming was the disappearing. In the water, her focus had been so pure that she thought of nothing else. Any school or home worries vanished. The art of swimming, she supposed, like any art, was about purity. The more you focused you are on the activity, the less focused you are on everything else. You kind of stopped being you and became the thing you were doing. But it was hard to stay focused when Nora noticed her arms and chest ache. She sensed it had been a long swim and was probably time to get out of the pool. She saw a sign, Bront Beach Swimming Pool. She vaguely remembered Dan, who had been to Australia in his gap year, talking about this place, and the name had stuck, Bront Beach, because it was easy to remember. Jane Eyre on a surfboard. But here was confirmation of her doubt. Bront Beach was in Sydney, but it most definitely wasn't part of Byron Bay. So that meant one of two things. Either Izzy, in this life, wasn't in Byron Bay, or Nora wasn't with Izzy. She noticed she was tanned, a mild caramel all over. Of course, the trouble was she didn't know where her clothes were. But then she remembered the plastic wristband with a key on it. 57. Her locker was 57. So she found the changing rooms and opened the squat square locker and saw that her taste in clothes, as well as watches, was more colorful in this life. She had a t-shirt with a pineapple print on it, a whole cornucopia of pineapples, and pink-purple denim shorts and slip-on checked pumps. What am I, she wondered, a children's TV presenter? Sunblock, hibiscus-tinted lip balm, no other makeup as such. As she pulled on her t-shirt, she noticed a couple of marks on her arm. Scar lines. She wondered momentarily if they had been self-inflicted. There were also a tattoo just below her shoulder, a phoenix in flames. It was a terrible tattoo. In this life, she clearly had no taste. But since when did taste have anything to do with happiness? She dressed and pulled out a phone from her shorts pocket. This was an older model than in her married and living in a pub life. Luckily, a thumb reading was enough to unlock it. She left the changing rooms and walked along a beachside path. It was a warm day. Maybe life was automatically better when the sun shone so confidently in April. Everything seemed more vivid, more colorful and alive than it had done in England. She saw a parrot, a sky blue and banana yellow macaw, perched on the top of a bench being photographed by a couple of tourists. A surfy-looking cyclist passed by holding an orange smoothie, smiling and literally saying, "G'day." This was most definitely not Bedford. Nora noticed something was happening to her face. She was, could it be? Smiling. And naturally, not just because someone expected her to. Then she noted a piece of graffiti on a low wall which said, "The world is on fire," and another one that said, "One Earth equals one chance." And her smile faded. After all, a different life didn't mean a different planet. She had no idea where she lived or what she did or where she was meant to be heading after the swimming pool. But there was something quite freeing about that, to be existing without any expectation, even her own. As she walked, she Googled her own name and added Sydney to see if it brought up anything. Before she scanned the results, she glanced up and noticed a man walking on the path towards her, smiling. A short, tanned man with kind eyes and long, thinning hair and a loose ponytail with a shirt that wasn't buttoned correctly. "Hey, Nora." "Hey," she said, trying not to sound confused. What time you start today? How could she answer that? Oh, crap, I've totally forgotten. He laughed, a little laugh of recognition, as if her forgetting was quite in character. I saw it on the road. I think it might be 11. 11 a.m.? Kind Eyes laughed. What have you been smoking? I want some. Ha, nothing, she said stiffly. I've not been smoking anything. I just skipped breakfast. Well, see you this Arvo? Yes, at the place. Where is it again? He laughed frowningly and kept walking. Maybe she worked on a whale sightseeing cruise that operated out of Sydney. Maybe Izzy did too. Nora had no idea where she or they lived, and nothing was coming up on Google, but away from the ocean seemed the right direction. Maybe she was very local. Maybe she had walked here. Maybe one of the bikes she saw locked up outside the pool cafe had been hers. She rummaged in her tiny clasp wallet and felt her pockets for a key. But there was only a house key. No car keys, no bike keys. So, it was a bus or by foot. The house key had no information on it at all, so she sat on a bench with the sun beating hard on the back of her neck and checked her texts. There were names of people she didn't recognize. Amy, Rodri, Bella, Lucy P. Kamala, Lucy M. Who are these people? And a rather unhelpful contact titled simply Work. And there was only one recent message from work, and it said, Where are you? There was one name she recognized, Dan. Her heart sank as she clicked on his most recent message. Hey, Nor, hope Oz is treating you well. This is going to sound either corny or creepy, but I'm going to go all out and tell you. I had a dream the other night about our pub. It was such a good dream. We were so happy. Anyway, ignore that weirdness. The point of this is to say, guess where I'm going in May? Australia. First time in over a decade. I'm coming with work. I'm working with MCA. Would be great to catch up, even for a coffee if you're around. B. It was so strange she almost laughed, but she coughed instead. Maybe she wasn't quite so fit in this life now she thought about it. She wondered how many Dans there were in the world, dreaming of things they would hate if they actually got them, and how many were pushing other people into their delusional idea of happiness. Instagram seemed to be the only social media she had here, and she only seemed to post pictures of poems on it. She took a moment to read one. Fire. Every part of her that changed, that got scraped off because of schoolyard laughter or the advice of grown-ups long gone and the pain of friends already dead. She collected those bits off the floor like wood shavings. She made them into fuel, into fire, and burned bright enough to see forever. This was troubling, but it was, after all, just a poem. Scrolling through some emails, she found one to Charlotte, a Silid bland flautist with early humor who'd been Nora's only friend at string theory before she had moved back up to Scotland. Hi, Charles. Hope all is fine and dandy. Pleased the birthday do went well. Sorry I couldn't be there. All is well in sunny Sydney. I finally moved into the new place. It's right near Bront Beach. Beautiful. Lots of neighborhood cafes and charm. I also have a new job. I go swimming in a saltwater pool every morning, and every evening I drink a glass of Australian wine in the sunshine. Life is good. Address 229 Darling Street, Bront. NSW, North Southwest, I'm guessing, 2024, Australia, Nora. Something was rotten. The tone of vague, distant perkiness as if writing to a long-lost aunt. The lots of neighborhoods, cafes, and charm as though it was a TripAd advisor review. She didn't speak to Charlotte or, indeed, anyone like that. There was also no mention of Izzy. Had finally moved into the new place. Was that we have or I have? Charlotte knew of Izzy. Why not mention her? She would soon find out. Indeed, 20 minutes later, she was standing in the hallway of her apartment, staring at 4 bags of rubbish that needed taking out. The living room looked small and depressing, the sofa tatty and old. The place smelt slightly moldy. There was a poster on the wall for the video game Angel and a vape pen on a coffee table with a marijuana leaf sticker on it. A woman was staring at a screen, shooting zombies in the head. The woman had short blue hair, and for a moment Nora thought it might be Izzy. "Hi," Nora said. The woman turned. She was not Izzy. She had sleepy eyes and a vacant expression, as if the zombie she was shooting had slightly infected her. She was probably a perfectly decent person, but she was not anyone Nora had ever seen in her life. She smiled. "Hey, how's that new poem coming along?" "Oh, yeah, it's coming along really well, thanks." Nora walked around the flat in a bit of a daze. She opened a door at random and realized it was the bathroom. She didn't need the toilet, but she needed a second to think. So she shut the door and washed her hands and stared at the water spiral down the plug hole the wrong way. She glanced at the shower. The dull yellow curtain was dirty in a vague student house kind of way. That's what this place reminded her of, a student house. She was 35 and in this life living like a student. She saw some antidepressants, fluoxetine, beside the basin and picked up the box. She read, "Prescription for N-Seed" at the top of the label. She looked down at her arm and saw the scars again. It was weird to have your own body offer clues to a mystery. There was a magazine on the floor next to the bin, National Geographic, the one with the black hole on its cover that she had been reading in another life on the other side of the world only yesterday. She sensed it was her magazine, given she had always liked reading it and had been known, even in recent times, to buy it on the occasional spontaneous whim, as no online version ever did the photos justice. She remembered being 11 years old and looking at the photos of Svalbard, the Norwegian archipelago in the Arctic, in her dad's copy. It had looked so vast and desolate and powerful, and she had wondered what it would have been like to be among it, like the scientist explorers in the article, spending their summer doing some kind of geological research. She cut out the pictures and they ended up on the pinboard in her bedroom. And for many years at school, she had tried hard at science and geography just so she could be like the scientist in the article and spend her summers among frozen mountains and fjords as puffins flew overhead. But after her dad died, and after reading Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, she decided that philosophy seemed to be the only subject that matched her sudden inward intensity. And philosophy seemed to be the only subject that matched her sudden inward intensity. And B, she wanted to be a rock star more than a scientist anyway. Is that enough to chew on? There's a little break in the chapter there.
I think so, but I don't know. What about you guys?
That was quite a bit. I'm about as lost as she is right now.
Well, she's in Australia, so she's finally in this life with Izzy, or it appears that she is. So that's pretty cool because this is a life that she really, really, really thought would be a good one, right?
But the thing is, Izzy's not there yet. She hasn't found her, so not sure if Izzy's really there. And two, it's kind of like two worlds together because she's near a place where Dan told her, Bronte Beach, but she's in Sydney, or not far from Sydney, where her and Izzy. So it seems like kind of like the mixture, a little bit of the last world and this current one, and maybe juxtaposing them together a little bit there.
It gives you some compassion for people with like Alzheimer's and stuff. Imagine like starting over new every day and not remembering who you are or where you live or what you do. Like every day is a new adventure for real.
Oh, yeah, I never thought that, but yeah, you're right. And something that kind of jumped out at me when we were going through this, it seems like so far she's in 1.25 lives that she's reviewing, I think, from the regrets part. But it's funny how even in going back so far and being able to access that and go through it, I guess it's still not living up to what she thought it would be, it seems like. So it seems like no matter how many times you go back and pick up where what you think was a start of a, or where life could have gone had you gone that way, but because of what we build up in our heads, I think if we were to really ever go back and live that out, we realize that we're probably still going to come across a lot of the same things that we deal with currently that make us question where we're at, what we're doing, if something's really better or if it's not better, or if this is all there is, and how do we make the best of this, and in this where we're at now, how can we make that better and our best life if we're still trying to go back and question, well, almost like the shoulda, coulda, woulda, or something in that, where we go back and to see if it would have been better. But I don't get the feeling that in the long run it would really, aspects of it might be better, but would it really be better? And I'm wondering if that's what she's finding out.
Kind of like when you go on vacation, you know, you go there and the rest of you kind of leave your own mumbo jumbo behind for a little bit. And you go into this just different place where you don't really have any expectations, and you're not focused on your own life. You're just focused on having a good time, right? But yet, if you try and move to a new place, say, you enjoy your vacation so much, you want to stay there, you want to move there, whatever, you move to this new location, and then for a little while it all seems new and wonderful and whatnot, but then all of a sudden, I don't know, reality checks, you have that reality kind of sets in, and all your mumbo jumbo is right there with you. All the stuff that you've brought, that you have internally, is still, it's all right there with you. And I don't know, it's interesting. And you and the whole, like, the concept of like Alzheimer's and having your memory, or like losing your memory or whatever, and so it kind of brings up this concept of, you could have a pretty much a happy-go-lucky life. You just let go of all this mumbo jumbo you carry with you everywhere you go. So it kind of it seems like it's a reminder of that, of all the possibilities of the universe are open to us if we just let go of the mumbo jumbo we carry around, all our expectations and all of that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the idea, like, where different place, same old stuff, that thing. Everyone thinks that the grass is greener on the side, and if they just get out of where they are, they can go somewhere else and things will be different. Um, but like I've heard from so many people that it's a different place, but you have the same characters and the same issues and all that. But in this section, she does seem, I mean, at least it hints that she's a little bit happier, and that she is maybe following more of a relaxed path, or a path that she's sort of gravitated towards. Found it interesting in the beginning that it mentioned, it was talking about her swimming, and then her also getting into music, and that she got into music to escape from the stress of the competition, I guess it was, but basically that, unless I heard it wrong, that she ended up getting into music because of her, I think it's her brother was playing music, so then she started doing that, and then that kind of helped her to get away from the stress. But it's interesting to me that she chose something that she was that was, in her life, that to distract her from stress of the competition, but it wasn't necessarily something that she chose. It sort of chose her in a way, in that, it was just there. She didn't go seek it, but it was there, and it allowed her to fulfill, or to, a certain aspect of her life there, and then that's a kind of became a part of her. It's not everything about her, and obviously she's more into swimming into this lifestyle, but it's just interesting that those subtle things about that they're mentioning in there that I'm picking up on.
Well, something I picked up on in the book, and I fully understand it, she was talking about the thing she had once loved about swimming was the disappearing. In the water, her focus had been so pure that she thought of nothing else. Any school or home worries vanished. The art of swimming, she supposed, like any sport, was about purity. The more focused you were on the activity, the less focused you were on everything else. You kind of stopped being you and became the thing you were doing. And I fully get that because of having, played sports competitive in junior high and high school, and then in junior high and high school playing tennis for 6 years. I very much got into that, where when I'm out practicing and stuff, and even now, and I haven't done it in a while, and that I was just thinking maybe that's something I need to do, is just take a day where I take a day for myself and go and just bang the living effing hell out of a tennis ball. Because sometimes when I go out and just do that and get away, and I can focus, I can think about things, I can, even if I'm going over things in my head that, I'm dealing with or whatever, but when I'm doing it in a unfocused way, it's weird. I'm more focused on, okay, am I hitting the ball right? Where am I hitting it? Am I placing it in the right spot and in the right places? And, is my form what I want it to be? Or, am I so out of practice that the ball's going way over here and stuff? And, so when I'm, in that, and I love hitting against the backboard because I'm just hitting, there's really nobody else there, but I can kind of let the world in my head and think and go over things, but it's weird. I'm not in it, but I can still deal with it and look at it, and I can look at it from a outside perspective. I can't explain it unless you've been there and have been there. It might be like when maybe when you're doing art, Catherine, or when whatever you guys like to do that you really get into, and you're in that moment, but yet somehow your brain's still going over and doing things that you can get a whole different picture. So for me, I get it, being, and I think that sometimes that's where life can get to, where we get so into everything and what's going on around us and what's happening, and letting that kind of be a guide or dictate or stuff, to where we don't give ourselves that time to stop and give us the permission to stop and just be in that thing that we really love to do, to kind of disappear from the world, so to speak. And when I do that, I tend to disappear from, and get in my own zone. So I get that, and I think maybe we don't do that enough, and then we try to run away to other scenarios or other things or other lives, and everything comes with us, instead of finding ways of dealing with it here and now, and in that way.
Yeah, and it was also that same thought there, Dan. It occurred to me about what you had said there as well, in regards to swimming and using that as kind of an escape, and how that's kind of a common theme with people when they talk about their hobbies, is that it allows them to kind of get away from the stress or whatever that's going on in the world, because they're focusing on that other thing. And it's interesting. It just occurred to me when Catherine was doing her beautiful reading there, that it was that it really doesn't matter what hobby you pick up, that is kind of what, in a lot of ways, we're all seeking, is to have something, or maybe even several things, that allow us to, and maybe not in a negative way, but sort of get away from this other stuff. And what is this other stuff that we're trying to get away from? But is it life? And then what do we think about these hobbies that we're getting into? Is that what we consider life? And is our life just made up of distractions in that sense? I don't know.
Made me think, because it's funny how we'll think about lives, or we'll look at things in the past, and we'll think, well, maybe if I had done that differently, or went off in that. But I'm going back to what I said earlier, I still think we would have, because we still take ourselves and what embodies us with us into those lives, even though, when we get to that, where we start looking at the regrets and thinking, oh, well, maybe if I had done this or this. But I still think we would find that in that life, there would still be, like you said, Jason, the minutia of everything that would still kind of be there with us. And we would find out that life really probably isn't all that we are glorifying it to be, that it would be so much better, and we'd be, which we might be, a little better off, or, have come across the right people, and, fallen into the right things. But then again, will we still be happy? But when we're in the things that we love to do, the things that we're, where we really are at peace, and where we kind of immerse ourselves and lose ourselves. And I think that's what everybody's trying to find in the world, is find that thing that really genuinely makes them happy. So that way, when they're in that moment, that's what they exude out to everybody else. So that way, going back to one of their books, the love that we put out and what we share with others. So when we're in those happy, places where we feel the most at peace, the happiest, the most loved, for lack of a better way, then that's what comes out, and that's what gets shared with everybody else. And then hopefully that, permeates out But when we get into our everyday lives and we're dealing with all the stuff and everything that comes in, and we let that overshadow or crowd it out, I think that's where we tend to get into the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and get down, and we let everything here that's going on right now bog us down, and we don't realize that we need to find that balance to give ourselves the time to be in that happy moments of that bliss. I think in a way to regenerate ourselves too, to get our battery, so to speak, back, built back up, and energy level back up, going back to what Catherine was saying earlier.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think that, in the same vein of what Samantha was saying, that we, or maybe it was more of my comment in regards to what she was saying about being in a different place and different characters. The same is maybe is that the only thing that changes, that we're if our environment has something to do with the for simplistic terms, the hobbies that we pick up, if we're close to the ocean, we're going to be more about the ocean and maybe swimming and being on boats and things like that, that sort of thing. If we're in the city, it might be more of a urban lifestyle and more like urban music and that sort of thing. But in the idea that our environment really sort of ends up guiding us to these specific hobbies, even though the idea of the hobby itself, whatever hobby it is, kind of fulfills a certain need that we have. The different hobbies that we are that we end up being around and being susceptible to, or that's what's the right word I'm looking for. Anyway, the the types of things that we end up doing because we're in that specific environment, it really is kind of dictated on the environment we're in. And so how much of it that is because of our intention, how much of it is that we're something that we're seeking out, and how much of it is that we're just saying, well, let me go experience what's in this environment, and then you start doing whatever's there, and that you may enjoy it, but the underlying thing that you're getting from it, you can get anywhere. It's
Yeah, I like, I definitely, the zone, I call it getting in the zone, through my art. I can definitely relate to all of that. And I think, Jason, what you said about, is our life just a bunch of distractions? A lot of the times it is. When you really think about it, we go from one thing to another, to another, to another, trying to distract ourselves from reality, or maybe it's not even reality. Maybe it's fears that we've built up that, aren't even real. That's the sad part about all of it. We may go through our whole life distracting ourselves from a fear that isn't even real. And as souls, this life is just a snap of the fingers, it's just like a breath. So it goes by so quickly. And even though it seems like sometimes when you're in down times or whatever, it seems like time is so slow, but it's really not. Like it goes by so fast. And it's funny, I remember, being a kid and thinking about different options for careers and stuff. And, I always wanted to be a veterinarian. But as kids, I mean, you don't limit yourself. You think you don't think, oh, well, I want to be a veterinarian, but that takes however many years in school and however many hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay for school. And then they got to do all this good stuff, but then they got to do this. Like, you don't even think about all that. You just want to be a veterinarian, right? You want to save animals. You want to be a veterinarian, or you want to be an astronaut, or you want to be whatever it is. And you don't have the but in there. I want to be an astronaut, but like as adults, and I don't know where exactly it kicks in, moving from childhood to adulthood, but somewhere along there, it kicks in where we start saying, well, yeah, I want to be a veterinarian, but, and then we give it like every reason why we can't do that. If we could just keep that childlike excitement about things and not let our adult analytical mind come in and throw in all the destruction and gloom and doom on it, we might get a lot further. But it's funny because with my granddaughter being 13, these are things that we have to discuss now, because in high school they're getting you ready for all of that. And these days you graduate with a college degree. Like when I went to high school, I didn't even graduate high school. I wound up getting a GED. But when I went to high school, the people that graduated, they got a high school diploma. Now, when you graduate high school, you get a BS, like a associate's in science degree or something like that, depending on, like, they do college classes in high school. So we really have to talk about these things, and I'm going to be much more aware of my words as we're discussing these things, so that I don't put any kind of buts on her when she's trying to make up her mind.
Ooh, you made a good point. Cause like for me, I graduated 41 years ago, and I graduated at, honors in my class. I was 55th in my class, but, and was primed to go to college, and I had the opportunity, if my mom would have let me, to take some college courses that one of my guidance counselors wanted me to do, but my mom said no. So there was a but put there in front of me in that sense, and then harsh realities came in. If I wanted to go to school, I could, but I had to come up with the money and the ways and the means to do it. It was kind of, that was the but that was put in front of me. It wasn't like, okay, but at the same time, that was the reality that I was dealing with. But, and not to use a lot of buts here, but sorry. It's interesting how, like you said, going from that childlike and that innocence and that to where, in some ways, it's almost overnight. You go to that adult, and that switch is flipped, it seems, in a way. And all of a sudden, with all the responsibilities of being an adult and all that and everything like that, you have to start weighing, for lack of a better term, the buts that are placed in front of you of what you're going to do and how you're going to move forward, that aren't there when you're a kid. 1 minute you're going to, as a kid, 1 minute you're going to be a doctor, the next minute you're going to be an astronaut, the next minute you're going to be a teacher, or, and there's so many things, because at that age, it's what seems like the fun or right or exciting thing to do at that moment. But then when we get to being, on the cusp of graduating and moving into the adult realm, all of a sudden we have to start making the decisions to decide how we're going to move forward. But we're not prepared, and I'm not saying my parents and stuff and didn't do the best they could and stuff, just like their parents did, but in some ways we're not prepared to be able to or allowed to hold on to some of that innocence so we can bring along and be able to be in our zone, for lack of a better way, like you said, Catherine, of what we really enjoy and what really fuels us and stuff like that. And make that, use that as the in my head, I know how I want to say it, find a way to be able to let that be how we live our lives. But because of what over eons and thousands of years and stuff of how things have grown and changed and come about, we're in what the type of society and life and stuff, and where you kind of have to make decisions and go down roads that maybe you're not necessarily wanting to go down, and then that adds on top to all the regrets and this and that and everything too. So I think it's in a lot of ways a big convoluted world and life, and we're all still trying to figure it out.
I'm sorry we lost Samantha. I guess her internet just was unstable this morning. Oh, you're muted.
Her internet was not in its zone of
Yeah.
happiness.
It was not in its happiness zone at all. Probably the grandkids had other things that needed to be doing.
Well, that, and I know that there might have been a polar strain, because I know a couple of kids I think were using tablets and stuff and things like that, so that probably did not help on
Oh
her.
yeah, I hadn't thought about that. With all of them there, they might have tablets and be on there.
Yeah,
It's true.
but perfect example. How, look at us with our lives, how plugged in and stretched and that we are, and how we can get drained, and how that can affect us, and how that makes us look and how we perceive things, as opposed to when we're at our most vibrant, highest level, energized self, of where we feel like we can take on the world or do anything, or that, that nice little analogy there of how to talk about, how that even plays into life.
Yeah, and I love Samantha's analogy about the vacation. That was a perfect analogy. You go on a vacation and everything seems so wonderful. It's kind of like the honeymoon phase of a marriage. They say, I don't know if it's the first 1 or 2 years of the marriage is the honeymoon phase, where everything is just lovely. And then all of a sudden you wake up one morning and look over and go, who the hell is that in my bed? What's going on here? And you're not seeing them through your rose-colored glasses anymore. The shininess wears off a little bit on that apple, and all of a sudden they're not the perfect person that you imagine they were. And the reason for that, and we talked about this last week, was chemicals in your body. There are chemicals that get stimulated when you're in love with somebody. And those chemicals basically take over your body. They do. They're hormones. And they can make you feel things that you wouldn't feel, and do and say things that you wouldn't normally do and say. Like, our bodies are so chemically run. It's really incredible. And of course, if you had to have a drug to be high on, love is the one. But I mean, it is true that it kind of wears off a little bit after the honeymoon phase on some things. I think I hate to say it, but age really does bring wisdom because of experience, I guess. I think you get better at relationships the older you get. I do anyway. I think I've become more understanding, definitely understanding. I've become, I don't have the need to get, to have the last word in, or to be right. Like, I've changed a lot through the years. Relationships become easier because they're based on more meaningful things, I think. And those are just phases of life that you go through. And some people don't get better at communication. I mean, it takes work. I've always known that communication was an issue for me. So that's something that I have worked on my entire life, is communicating. When I went to college, I did public speaking because I knew that would help me learn how to. It's hard. It's challenging for me sometimes to get what's in my head out to my hands. That's why I understood my son when that happened to him in school. I knew it because I recognized it, because it came from me. Like, oh yeah, I know that one. So, um, it's maybe this is why we come back for all these incarnations. Like, how many times have we said, well, why do we keep coming back? Maybe this is why. Just curiosity. What would have life had been like if I would have made a different decision at age 22 or whatever, you know? So we come back and try again and again and again and again. And I do think we get better, the more we practice.
Yeah, I find it so interesting that in this book, in regards to the character and concept of the book, that it just drops her into a time and place and path of life that where she has no recollection of how she got there, either in location or in the environment, and um, how everything culminated in her life. She has no idea. So it's not the ideal thing that we might think of, oh, if I could take a different path in life, let me and letting her start from an early age and make different choices and stuff. It just plops her into a different life where she doesn't know what choices she made, and um, what brought her to that place in life. So I don't know if that's been being done on purpose, but it gives me the idea that she's not looking at making a decision on, oh, let me start to live another different existence. It's showing her the contrast of how things would have been, instead of actually giving her a chance to live these different paths.
I agree. I think to a little point with you, Jason, on what you were just saying, but I also look at it this way. It's like she has the assumptions of what she thinks having gone off and lived that life would have been like. So I think the author is dropping her in these points without the backdrop, because it may have been up to this point where she got dropped in, kind of like how she's thinking. But in this point where she's being dropped in, maybe that's the pivotal point of where she may have been on the cusp of making a new significant decision that might take her on, a different path. But here now, because of the fact that she knows she's been dropped into this, now she gets to make the choices here forward of how she wants to play it out, because of what she already thinks in her mind is how it should play, or how it did play out. Whereas instead of going back from when she was younger, before that point came in, and then she just goes off on that tangent. I think this is where, and I think the point I'm getting out of this is that at any point in time, I think we all have that choice to make the decision to, if we really are not happy with the way our lives are going, nobody else can change that for us except us. And we have to be the one willing to make that choice and decision from here forward, based on no matter what the past was like anyway, because we can't go back and change that now, but we can only change going forward.
Exactly. It's our choice every day, every moment of every day, every interaction with every person and every day.
And I think you even said this before, Catherine, is like you said, we get to make that choice every day. But so many of us, I think, abdicate that to reacting rather than being more take more control of what's going on in our lives and say, okay, in this moment. And sometimes, like I said, we can't necessarily take that 5-10 minute choice to sit there and look at everything. We got to make instantaneous decisions. But there are those times and points where we can really look and evaluate, and then make that decision of, okay, no, I really want to move this way. I'm going to move this way. And I don't care what everything out there is trying to tell me that's going to happen. No, I'm still going to. And I think too many times we just react and feel like that's the only thing we can do, is we have to react because we have no control over any of this out there. And in some cases, we don't have control of certain aspects, but we can still control how we respond.
Yeah, there's this kind of school of thought too in regards to planning out your path in life, and that and there's all different degrees of this, of how much of it is are you going to focus and make happen, and how much are you going to kind of get into a, or how much of it you're going to allow to happen, kind of like going on I don't want to say getting into a flow, because that's different. That's kind of different. That's a little bit more purposeful, but kind of allowing your environment and the momentum that you have and everything else kind of develop your path in life, as to opposed to purposely giving a lot of energy and effort and focus to making something happen, regardless of the buts that come up. It kind of draws the contrast into, and to get back to the idea of the flow, is like, I understand what you're talking about there with, I love to get in the flow in multiple different ways, and as an artist and getting into a piece of art and working on that is amazing. And then also athletically, especially like in regards to like hitting the ball against the wall, there's that focus and there is a flow much in the same, but when you're working with art, it's sort of like you're sitting in the moment and you're letting your creativity come, and you're acting on that, and there is effort, but the degree of effort is much different in playing tennis, and not just playing tennis with someone else, but like especially with hitting a ball against the wall, because you go out there, you think in your mind, like in a video game, oh, just get out there, I'll hit the ball, it'll come right back to me and I'll hit it again. But when you get out there, then you realize, well, I have to hit that ball at a very, intense rate in order to get that ball to come all the way back to me on one bounce so that I can hit it again. And I have to hit it at a certain angle and a certain speed and all this. And then I have to position myself in a certain way before it gets to me, because it's coming back pretty quick if I do hit it that hard. And so it becomes, instead of being like, oh yeah, in your mind you think, oh, it'll be nice to just get out there and hit against the wall. Once you get out there, then it's like, wait, I have to put all these other things into play that really make me exert myself in order to get it to work the way I imagine it to. And you get and you're efforting yourself, you're exerting yourself, but you end up getting into a flow. It's just a flow where you're actually exerting yourself quite a bit to keep that momentum going. And you're focusing at a much more intense rate and in so many physical aspects. It's it's just different. And there's nothing wrong about either way. It's just that I was just wanted to bring up about the difference in it. It's both wonderful, and it's both can be seen as being in a flow, and then that focus takes us into that, kind of allows us to focus on that one thing when we're not, and as a distraction, or maybe as a complement to the rest of our existence and what's going on in our life. But nonetheless, it's there's a definite difference to it. And then what I wanted to bring up a point about was that in finding that flow, the difference between finding that flow and of allowing things to just kind of develop, as to putting a lot of effort and intense focus into it. Both ways have require focus. You still are focusing, and even maybe just as intensely. But one has more of a physical and like an efforting, like I have to do so much to make it come out just right. And the other might be a little bit more like I'm going to allow it to develop in just whatever way it does. Again, neither one is wrong, and it gives in such a in a similar fashion kind of the same result. So I'll just leave it there. I think I said enough.
Well, I think to add on to what you were just saying, when I've done art and things in art, I get very focused on what I'm doing and stuff. And there is an intensity, and I'm sure Catherine will back this up. There is an intensity that you have, and there is energy and effort being exerted, because in some things you have to, like a sculptor has to, do this, and and in drawing or making art or painting and stuff, there is exertion and stuff. It's not as physical in some aspects of, like when I go hit the tennis ball, but it's has an exertion of its own, in the sense that there is some physical, but there's also maybe in some cases more mental exertion, because of you're trying to create what's up here and put it into a painting or a sculpture, or whatever you're creating. So there's but it also releases your, I think what it does is release our subconscious, or whatever part of our brains that can work on things when we're focused on something. And sometimes that's when we get our best answers to things, is when we're not focused on it but still working on it, and we're focused on something else, to take that intense, like right now, oh, I need to come up with a something for this, or that answer, or this or that or the other way. Sometimes I get some of my best stuff is when I'm being in the creative form, whether it's out hitting a tennis ball, because in a way that for me is being creative. I'm not in my normal focus of what I normally do day to day, or when I'm sitting listening to music, or drawing, or my best thing is I love to just kind of doodle and and I draw these mazes, and these mazes go nowhere, but I love just drawing these little mazes, and I've always loved doing that, because I just, wherever the lines go and squiggles and wherever, but it's so cathartic and relaxing for me. And as I'm doing it, my brain tends to think of things, and sometimes like, oh, let me try this for that rather than this or something, and it'll just hit me out of the blue. So I think in that sense, and I think that's what we're trying to do with our lives. Sometimes we try and think that, oh, I'm in this life, it's not really going the way I thought it was going to go, or how I pictured it, or whatever, because of circumstances that come up beyond our control sometimes, and some that we're too afraid to try things or switch things up or something like that. But then we get to a point where you look back and we're like, oh, well, had I gone here and done that, it would have been better. But then if we go to that life, it may not have been better. It may have been way worse, or it could be way better. But so now the point is, I'm here and I've got the regret, but I'm at this point. Do I have the wherewithal in me to say, okay, I'm going to make a switch and go and change to try and achieve what I think that life might have been? Or am I going to be willing to stay here in this one and we keep moving forward in this one? Or am I going to go off on a whole different tangent and go do something else? That may be something totally different. That's not even a regret, but that we're just wanting something totally new and different. So that way we don't have regrets on the current life we're having now that we think we might have. It's, I think that, and I think that's why we all need those times where we find something that we can get into that zone, and something that, because if there was a way to do some of the things I really love to do and be and feel like I could live and survive, I would do it. And that's I think part of my bigger fear is that, will I be able to live the life that I want to live, that I'm accustomed to, doing the things that I really love doing? And I think that's the biggest problem that everybody has with trying to live their lives and trying to find that.
Well, what you're saying is so true, and I think that the idea of these hobbies, the hobbies have, in relation to what you were just saying in regards to, your you saying that, there were things that you wish you could do if you thought they were available for you to do them. In these with the hobbies, that would be like I wish I could do this, but I can't because of whatever. Well, in the hobbies that we're doing, we're more familiar with the buts. We know how to get past them, and we do what we the buts are still there in art or in whatever physical thing you're doing, or whether it's tennis or whatever, and music or art, they're still there. We're just more familiar with them, and we get past them easier, or we know, maybe not necessarily easier, but we do get past them, and we believe that we get past them. We focus past them. And whereas in life and in other aspects, especially things that we desire to do, but we're not as familiar with, we haven't gone down that path with, it's harder to focus through those button moments, those obstacles. It's harder to see ourselves overcoming those hurdles, and perhaps we don't focus through enough to get there, even though we don't see that path all the way through from where we are. It's most definitely possible for anyone to do whatever it is that they choose to focus on long enough to get where they want to go. Now, if that makes any sense, but
Absolutely, it makes sense. And it's all, they're all choices. It's like, my granddaughter's 13. For 13 years, she didn't know how to swim. And a couple of days ago, I taught her how to swim. Do you want to know how to swim? She made the choice. Yes, I want to know how to swim. Okay. The water was scary, but we worked through all that, and now she can swim. And it's just the matter of making the choice and being willing to understanding that there's going to be fearful things, and there's going to be things that don't go exactly the way you pictured it, but that, we still have to remember to focus on the good things that's going on and not just all the bad things. We always tend to just always are looking for the bad things. There's always the but in there. I'm trying to get but out of my language and trying to use the word and instead of but. So, I'm not always good at it, but I'm trying because there's too many buts. But and I should say, and it's a habit, we do get into habits actually, and it takes effort to change habits, but they can be changed. Like we have read so many books about how to make a habit, how to change a habit, and it's takes time and effort, but it's worth it. So I hope everybody has a wonderful 4th of July weekend, and enjoy yourself. Get out and do something that you haven't done before, or something that you used to enjoy doing. There you go. You got your pinwheel. Something that you enjoyed as a child, that you haven't done in a long time. Even something as simple as swimming. I mean, Jason, you're down there next to the beach, so I'm sure you swim all the time. But for people that are inland, like my granddaughter was raised inland, there was no water around her. To me, like, to hear that a 13-year-old doesn't know how to swim, it was such a shock, because I've been swimming since I was a baby. And swimming is one of those zone areas for me. Like I love to swim. I'm a total fish. So, or mermaid or whatever. So even something as simple as that, just something that you haven't done in a while, getting out and hitting a tennis ball. I used to love I never liked playing tennis with somebody else, but I always loved playing it with the wall. I don't know if that's called something different from tennis, but if there's another name for it, but I love to play, by myself on the wall, but I'm going to get a tennis ball and find a place to do that because it's good exercise and it's, I can remember getting in the zone doing that, And when Pong first came out, oh my God, I don't know if you guys ever played Pong. Sometimes something like that can be a zone. Just don't get in the zone and get lost is all. Some people get lost in it. I get lost in the zone a lot. uh, Sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. And this is the last thing I'll say. I'll quit jabbering on. When you do remote viewing, when you're doing controlled remote viewing and you're using, I think they call anagrams or something, they give you this number, which is just a representation of an object or something, like it may be a 6-digit number, and that's all the information you have. And so the way that you begin your session is you start by writing that number, and then you just you put pen to paper and you let that pen do whatever it does. It's kind of like automatic writing or something. And that, when you're doing that, where you're not controlling it and you're just scribbling or whatever, that is how the subconscious communicates with the conscious, is when you're not focusing, actually. So when you're in that zone, like you're focused, but you're not focused at the same time, that's when your subconscious can really communicate with your conscious. Because that scribbling, when you analyze that scribbling, it is symbols, and those symbols have meanings, and it is a direct communication of what's going on. So there really is something, I don't know how to describe it scientifically as to what's going on, but there's totally something about being in that zone, and that's where God or creator or whoever you think is out there communicating to you can really get through without all those buts being in the way, and the mind being involved. So do it. Get in the zone, man. I love you guys. Have a great week.
Yeah. Once again, hope everyone have a fun, safe, happy 4th of July. Love the pinwheel, Jason. That was cool. Yeah, I don't do enough of those moments where I just sit there and let my mind draw my little mazes and stuff. But when I do, I love doing that. I love just sitting there and just letting it free form, and I come up with all the. I would love to be able to have it turn out to where I could look at it and say, "Oh, there's a picture of a sky or moon," but it never seems to do that. I don't look at it enough to see it. But there is something about that, and like for me, going and hitting a tennis ball, I wanted to bring out a point. When you're hitting a tennis ball against a wall, though, sometimes depending on how you hit it, because of how you put a spin on it, top spin, underspin, slice it or whatever, however, depending on how you're hitting it, the ball can bounce off the wall, and you may think it's going to come back towards you. But next thing it knows, it bounces and goes off over that way, and you're scrambling to chase it down over there. So even in that sense, it throws the little zingers on you too. That just like life, you'll be on this path, and all of a sudden you'll come and oh, I got to go this way. Something happened. And that's what I love about doing that, is because even though most of the time I know what's going to come back pretty much my direction, every now and then it might hit off the wall or board or something, just hit a little nail or something, or on there, speck of dirt or whatever, and send the ball. And I'm like, oh no, now I got to go chase it down. And in tennis, normally you don't you only give it one bounce. So I'm trying to scramble and hit it before it makes a second bounce. As I've gotten older, I found sometimes now it's going to be 2 bounces because I am not moving that fast to get there. But it still gives me the chance and the wherewithal to kind of detach and think and let things just kind of, because I'll be like, Catherine says, it's in construct, I call it destructive focus, because I'm focused on that, but I'm not really focused on anything in particular. I just want to hit the ball, and then that's when my brain can really just go and think about stuff. And and that's sometimes when I really can clear things out in my head about, oh, let me handle this situation this way, let me go with it that way, and I hopefully will get that result that I want. But if I don't do that, sometimes I'm sitting here blindly going, okay, let me just do this, let me do that, and kind of reacting. So I think we all need those moments, and I think we need to learn to schedule those more for ourselves too. That free time, just, okay, it's free time, let me just go do what and allow ourselves and give ourselves permission for that. And that way, maybe we might find ourselves also a little more, hope people understand, a little more stable in things that are going on in our lives. And so that way we don't just react, and we don't get blindsided and overwhelmed, and because then that's a form of taking care of ourselves too, and putting ourselves first. So with that,
Yeah.
for the Saturday Morning Mastermind, we went a little longer than we normally do, but we got started a little later too. Hopefully Samantha will be back with us, and I hope she has an awesome 4th of July. Love you guys. And we're on Facebook at Mindset Mastery, and we're on YouTube at Mindset Mastery. And you can find us on our website at mindsetmastery.com, and find all the ways to join us here on the Zoom and be on the panel. And we would love to hear your thoughts and what you think, because we don't have all the answers either. So we're just trying to figure things out one day at a time. So with that, love you all. See you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.